Women who are white or of a certain age, we are the only people of which culture has all free for all attack us all the time. And my kids, and I do love them, will go, that's silencing. Silence is violence to everybody except for women 50 and up. And it's that age, you may not say anything.
Welcome to the Unspeakable Podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Daum. My returning guest is Sandra Tsing Loh. And in lieu of doing an entirely separate, pre-recorded, overkill kind of intro, I'm just going to bring you in right now. You're here right now, Sandra.
I'm
so
stepping
welcome.
In. I'm here. It's so lovely to see you on our coast.
So you were last on this podcast more than 4 years ago. I was looking this up. It was September 2020. You were one of the first guests. And it's kind of, it's a little bit weird because what you're here to talk about now, I don't know how it links up to what we were talking about before, but it was all about the struggle, as is everything here, how difficult it is to make it. I'm going to, by way of introducing you, of contextualizing you a little bit, but also I think this kind of flows naturally into this conversation. I'm going to read a little excerpt from the show notes from the last time you were here. Okay.
Right.
So this is what I said.
Right.
I said, when Sandra Tsing Loh was beginning her career in the 1980s, she modeled herself after avant-garde performance artists like Laurie Anderson. She even put Tsing in her name because she thought it sounded Yoko Ono-ish. But after, I thought about doing that too, because I have issues with my name, but didn't. See, it was a little off. Okay. But after becoming an established figure in the Los Angeles art scene and a prolific writer for alternative publications, Sandra's life began to change, and so did the notion of artistry itself. In this interview, and that would be the interview from 4 years ago, she talks about the realities of making art in the current economic and cultural landscape, the tyranny of promoting your work on social media, not being Asian enough, and much more. Okay. So 4 years later, I feel like you're in a different place. You have this hit show. You have been in New York and in London, and now you're doing a one-woman show about the show and the journey that it had. So start there. Tell us about the journey.
Well, it's very much, interestingly, the same place, but it's deeper. It's kind of like getting deeper into this land of our independence, our emancipation, if you will, from all cultural institutions. And it's interesting that it was 4 years ago, because that brought us into the pandemic, where a lot of different things happened and stuff changed. In that year, I had a book come out, and it was sort of the end of, it was a domestic comedy book called Madwoman and the Roomba. It comes out on Blackout Tuesday in George Floyd time. So it's kind of like, you see, wow, this is really a new cultural era where certain things are going to be highlighted. And these are the realities of the pandemic and what occurred in that time. So so basically over the pandemic, like historically, out of that book, Madwoman and the Roomba, it was the Irma Bombeck comedy of whatever. So, I started writing a play out of that called Madwomen of the West. And it was very much about the conversations that women have 50 and over. And I think it's always interesting that, there's the statistic that 60% of people who buy theater tickets in America are women 50 and older, but you rarely see them on stage, not as mothers or wives or anything like that. So because of the pandemic, I was able to do this on Zoom and get 4, to me, boomer icon actresses that I would never be able to get otherwise. Caroline Aaron, who's Shirley Maisel in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, when you see her face, and she's been on the podcast too. She's a fantastic actress that everyone knows. Marilu Henner from Taxi and all. Melanie Mayron from 30-something. Melissa, that has really not been on stage in decades. And also JoBeth Williams, from The Big Chill, etc. Only because of the pandemic were they even able to Zoom at the same time. So somehow I was able to develop a play with this cast that I would never otherwise get. And it, and it was very much the things that women, not trans women, just women, regular old cis women. I call myself a 62-year-old cis crone, talk about as they ponder, and Wendy Wasserstein was another playwright about 20 years ago who wanted to get women of a certain age on stage. And interesting, like none of her plays are produced on the planet anymore. They're very much of it. We used to call them the chattering class of the NPR listening women. They are sort of privileged, but not entirely so. And they're really puzzling over what it means to be a woman now, where even NPR on Planned Parenthood, they have to say people who can get pregnant, not women.
Right. And we should say, just for context, in case some listeners don't know, Wendy Wasserstein, of course, wrote the Heidi Chronicles.
Right.
That's probably her most famous.
And Sisters Rosenzweig. And with actually many of these, Meryl Streep and these same era of actresses were in those. And so that they're talking, and this was an early version of this got me kicked out of the Ojai Playwrights Conference. I've mentioned that before.
Yeah, we talked about that on your last appearance.
Because women were going, okay, we wake up now, we can't say we're a she. We went through the sexual liberation, which is neither sexual nor liberation for us. The big shoulder pads, 90s. Then we were punished for being those girl bosses, and then we had to breastfeed our children for 24 years. And now then Hillary Clinton goes on the 50th anniversary of Betty Friedan's, feminist mystique. Hillary Clinton loses to Trump, and now all we do is misgender people and have our kids, blame us for using plastic straws and strangling all the turtles in the ocean. So women were just always in the wrong place at the wrong time. So that's very much what this play I was writing was about. And that I know that sort of a 4-person comedy like this can sell tickets, because I know what theater goers look like. You can see them in the lobby, and I know this play can sell. So I started developing that. And then around the same time in 2022, Center Theater Group, CTG, in Los Angeles, which does the Kirk Douglas, the Amundsen, and the Taper, they had programmed Jeremy O. Harris's Slave play, which is a big coup for them. Very provocative, but very popular and funny and edgy play, slave play about, black and white relations in sort of the sex play framework. And then Jeremy O. Harris notices the season that he's on in 2022 has 14 out of 15 male playwrights. There's only one female playwright. So he says in 2022, you may not do my play unless next season, 2023, 2024, you have an all-female playwright season.
Okay, wait, and this is the playwright of Slave play,
yes,
to be clear?
He says
okay.
He gets to, because he's so powerful, and which is kind of great, where he says, next time it's all female. So this is 2023. Meanwhile, here I am, I've written this play. I've written about women's issues for the Atlantic Monthly as a contributing editor for over a decade and a half. I'm well known in LA. I've done, off-Broadway and South Coast repertory and Geffen Playhouse. And I'm like going, this is a fantastic opportunity. You almost can't even think of 15 female playwrighs in Los Angeles. And I'm Asian, and it's great. And then, in fact, they were really interested in my play, and we did a couple of developmental workshops for the all-female season at CTG that was going to run 2023, 2024. But of course, what happens, the warning signs, as we like to say in the new era, come first gradually, then quickly, of like, well, maybe it's not going to be 15 female playwrights. Maybe it's going to be 11 because we don't have budget cuts. And then, maybe 9. And then the question starts coming up, as it always does in 2022, 2023. Well, you have 4 white women. Can one of the characters be black? Can black? And I go, well, I just think whatever color they are, they should be at the same level of privilege. And if there's 3 white women and then 1 black woman character, then the black woman has to have the monologue at the end that calls everyone out for not under, you know what I mean? You just can't have, or it could be all 4 black women. One of my favorite, actually the funniest road trip movie with 4 women is Girls Trip, all black women. And they can be all black. Like, they just have to be at the same level of privilege, and it doesn't matter. But I also think there is something in writing of this play with these 4 sort of boomer icons that sort of are waking up in a new world and go, what is the new world that we're in exactly? There is something I think about white women, and I'm an Asian American, I'm a yellow, whatever, is like, they're kind of a group of people. And I I, at 62, because of the ageism thing, in playwright conferences in America, I'm considered a white Republican just because I have I dared to turn 62. So just anyone older.
Okay, so this is sort of like rock, scissors, paper. So like age covers ethnicity, right?
And as
it
I used
overrides
to say
it
to those playwrights when I got kicked out of Ojai, I said, "Oh, young playwrights of color, don't you worry. At age 45, you'll magically become white." They didn't like
As everybody does.
And I do think, though, that either women who are white or of a certain age, we are the only people of which culture has all free for all attack us all the time. And my kids, and I do love them, will go, that's silencing. Silence is violence to everybody except for women 50 and up. And it's that age, you may not say anything. And then the whole Karen thing starts applying and whatever. So I actually thought it was intriguing that these women actually happen to be white women, and they're blamed for having all the privilege, but they really don't. I mean, they're not going to get an artistic grant anytime soon, nor am I. So as it came up, then eventually my play was dropped from the all-female season, which, of course, it's just where I go, oh my God, I can't. So, and in fact,
did they produce so how many female playwrights did they end up producing?
Well, it's interesting. I think they did about 7. And then one was like Anna Devere Smith's Twilight, which is the brilliant solo show, this, black art.
Oh, so stuff that was already around.
Yeah, 30 years ago. Except this time, since I think she didn't want to do it, they had these 10 parts, around 10, that she played as a solo performance so brilliantly. And you would see her transform. They had them played by 10 different people. Which I think is like, instead of Evel Knievel, one guy jumping 20 floors, you get 20 guys on little motorcycles to jump up. Like what, 1776 with an all-female cast, Transparent, the musical for 0.4% of the population. So in other words, the whole thing ticks boxes. And then Larissa Faster's the first Indigenous female playwright to be on that, was going to close their season. So all the boxes were ticked, but just not the woman, the woman box. And there I was. So I ended up so I go, darn it. I just know if this was read once aloud with these women, because they're so great, and I wrote it for them. Marilu Henner is like the Swizzle Stick, the Cat in the Hat, who's become so famous and written so many health space books that she's driving the others nuts with her TED Talks. And all the actors had a great sense of humor about how they're represented on stage. And Melanie Mayron, I go, what if Melissa on 30-something now is in her 60s? She's in her pajamas, still a photographer. So I kind of wrote it. And
it's kind of meta, right? So
yes,
she's,
it's
more than a nod to Melissa.
More than a nod.
Yes.
It was completely written for her. And so I sort of, but now you have to understand, culture is dead in LA now. So a couple of things have happened is all our cultural institutions have fallen. The quick TED Talk version is, Craigslist comes in. Now Futon ads are online and free. All alternative weeklies from the LA Weekly to Village Voice are destroyed. Public radio has become very corporate and newsy and foundation based. And of course, our great theaters that started with regular theaters with subscribers, basically the Ford Foundation in the 1960s, and then also subsequently the Doris Duke Foundation. And I always like to say, people don't remember that Doris Duke was like a larcenous murderess who murdered her ex-lover and used the sticky gas pedal defense. So
wait, who was Doris Duke? Remind us who is Doris Duke?
The Charitable Foundation. So whenever you hear the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, it's like she's like a billionaireess of many years ago who's using all these people of color to whitewash the fact that she's murdered. And you can Wikipedia. And also because I'm a 62-year-old cis crone, I want to make sure that I burn as many bridges as possible, always and ever, just to keep myself authentic and full. So that these cultural institutions, they get all this foundation money And then after about 2000s, their donors and boards encouraged them to raise more money in capital campaigns. So now they have $178 million theater complexes like the Guthrie Arena Stage, et cetera. So now you have theaters and big theater, repertory theaters like Central Theater Group that are completely, they have staffs of 200, and it's administrators and it's grant writers and capital campaigns and stuff. So artists really start getting sidelined. And in fact, it's much better to pick something politically that's like, well, I'm a Black and a trans, like whatever political thing the foundation will grant it's just much more financially expedient to pick those things. So I decide that I can do it myself, and I'm at the Odyssey Theater. And so basically it's where I just go, and there's no place to market anymore. As you know, local journal, like the Los Angeles Magazine, is like a bunch of realtor and dental ads. Like there's no newsprint anymore.
I know. But maybe you could take out an ad like the places where realtors, like a park bench or something. Did you think about that? Or billboards are surprisingly cheap.
I ended up doing it in Performances Magazine. I took out these ads and actually ended up, because it got to the right people, the unsung people who actually go to theater, which, for better or worse, are older people, white people, Jews, women, gays, all these people that are dying to go to theater, but with the new, theater decree in these repertory theaters that are all foundation based. I've actually been on Zooms. I can't remember, where they'll go, okay, we can't have white subscribers anymore, Jews or women or all things. We need to reach out to an ethnic group that are these, it can be, I call the Vietnam, Lao, whatever ethnic group, indigenous, who do not come to theater. They don't like theater. They don't have any history of theater. They won't pay for theater. They don't even like the lattes and kind bars that are in the lobby. That's very white. They don't like to face a proscenium stage. They want to bring their own food.
Now that's white supremacy. I would think having to space a stage or sit in a seat, or it starts at a certain time. That's the other thing. The curtain rises at a certain time.
Right.
That's white supremacy. I want to actually pause here for a second, because I would be very curious, and we don't have to take forever with this, but I would be very curious to hear sort of your analysis of why this has happened.